I'm now going to do a tour of Moodle to highlight the areas that can be extended by plugins. And so the first bit you meet with Moodle is the authentication, and normally you would log in as a normal user, but you can, if so allowed by the site admin, log in as a guest, which is a very limited user role. And some sites will actually allow anonymous users to browse some parts of the site, but in most cases you'd be wanting to log in as a user. Now I'm going to log in as an administrator, as a site admin, which gives us access to all the areas that that I need to show you. But in most cases you would log in as a normal user. And so as a normal user, once you're authenticated, you have a very low role called authenticated user. So not very much you can do apart from your own area, which is like this dashboard is the user's home page, and we have a site home, which is the home for the site. And then your navigations, you have two sets of navigations mainly. The user navigation, which is up here, which gives you access to things like your profile, your grades, etc., preferences, etc. And plugins can actually add stuff to this into this navigation, as well as the main navigation here. Now, me being logged in as a site administrator, I have a site administration link in my navigation that I can go to. And as we are talking about authentication plugins, I'll show you the type of authentication plugins that come with Moodle out the box. Now, 3 are enabled: manual accounts, email-based self-registration, and no login. So email-based self-registration, if allowed, would allow users to actually self-register to use the site. Manual accounts are ones that are managed manually by the admins. And no login you use in times where you want to stop somebody logging in but don't really want to affect any of the other records, so a non-delete type thing. Then you've got other ones that are disabled by default, and some of the useful ones: external database, if you've got an external user database; LDAP server, which works with Active Directory as well. We have OAuth and Shibboleth, which is used quite widely in some university sectors. And then we have a web services authentication for when you want to have web services authenticating against your Moodle. And then there's below that is common settings that refer to all authentications, things like allowing guest login, number of concurrent logins, things like instructions, etc., etc. So that is the authentication plugins. So we're talking about users, and if we go across to users and look at roles, as I said originally, we were once logged in, you are basically an authenticated user, and that doesn't give you much rights apart from maybe messing around with your dashboard really and your profile. There's a special case for authenticated user on front page, but the rest of them are generally the default roles that are available. Now, roles are context sensitive, so the role applies in a particular context. So for example, student and teacher are in a course context. They wouldn't make sense outside of a course context, so they are restricted to a course context. And indeed, a teacher can be a teacher in one course and a student in another, say for example for professional development at a school, for example, right? Then you have wider ranging roles like the manager, which would normally be site-wide, and the course creator, which is normally somebody who's going to be creating courses in a particular category of courses, in a group of courses. Okay. So if we go back to our dashboard, normally this would be our area to play around if we are not in the courses, and we can since this is my home page, I can customize it the way I want. And you'll notice here these little things that look like widgets. These are blocks in Moodle parlance, and so you can adjust them, you can move them around, you can delete them. But if you ever get to the point where you really just messed it all up, you can reset the page to default, which would set it up to take the default setup, which is managed by the site administrator. So, and what can you do with that? You can add blocks, so you can add other blocks. So Moodle out the box comes with quite a lot of blocks. Some of them are already on our page, like calendar, etc. in our page, but there are a lot more other ones that are available to users to add to their home page. Now, some blocks make sense on a dashboard. Some blocks will only make sense in a course or on the site home. So there is a way for blocks to actually determine or manage where they are added. And blocks is another area that can be extended by plugins. You can. It's one of the most simple ways of extending Moodle is via blocks. Right, so we're going to stop customizing our page, leave it alone, and now we'll talk about courses, the engine of learning environments. And in Moodle, courses are organized in categories and subcategories and courses. So you have categories. This is a default category when you create a new Moodle instance, and categories can contain other categories, so you can have subcategories similar to folders on a hard disk, and then in each of those categories you can have courses. So this is a plugin development course in the miscellaneous category. So, and then we can have a look at the course. So let's go and have a look and view our course, and this is a course view. Okay, and what you might notice is that we've got topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. This is because this is a topic course format topics, course format. Course format's another area that you can extend Moodle with and make and actually change the way your courses are displayed, and each course can have its own. So you can have different courses with different course formats. It's not across the board. Okay, and I'll show you that. We'll go into the settings. We'll go down to our course format, and you can see we have several course formats here. So currently we are in a topics format. A single activity format would mean one activity that would actually act like the whole course. We have a social format, which seems to suggest lots of discussion. We have a weekly format, which will organize the sections in weeks. So if I save that now as a weekly format, you'll notice that it has changed to dates here. Okay, so users of courses. So users are participants. Now, participants are people who are enrolled on the course. Other users may have access to the course, but they are not participants, such as a manager or a course creator might actually will have access to a course, but they cannot partake in the course. The people who can partake in a course are the teacher, dance editing teacher, and student, and they would normally be enrolled. And you can enroll users, enrolled by user. You can enroll by cohorts. I'll touch on that in a bit, and set the actual role in that course. So somebody can be a manager in a course as well. And you can restrict start dates, etc., in here. So this is the manual enrollment. So all these users here have been enrolled via a manual enrollment. Enrollments is another area where you can extend Moodle. And there are several ways, several enrollment methods. So if we look at enrollment methods here, at the moment we have manual enrollments, guest access, which is turned off, and self-enrollment. These are kind of basic ones that are applied when a course is created, and there are other ones like self-enrollment and cohort sync. Cohorts, yeah, but there are many others. If we slip back to our site admin and go to plugins, we can look at a number of different enrollment plugins. So we have those 4 that seem to be enabled, and then we have lots of other ones that are turned off by default. So we've got things like PayPal, LTI tool, LDAP enrollments on payment, etc. So these are the various ways you can have enrollments on a course, and you can develop your own enrollment plugin to suit your needs. Okay. So if we go back to our course, right, and we go back to our participants, you'll notice that apart from the role, there's also groups mentioned here. Now, students can be organized, students and any participant can be organized in groups, and groups make it easier to manage access to activities and resources that may be in your course. And if we look here, in this course we have 3 groups with 10 people in each group, okay, and these are basically groupings of students. And then we have a concept of groupings, which is basically a group of groups. So this high-level maths grouping has 2 groups in it, group 1 and group 2, and you can manage access to activities and what have you with the groups. There is another way that groupings work in Moodle, right, and that is via cohorts, and cohorts are at a higher level than the course, and so we have them here. And cohorts come in 2 flavors, right? Ones that are system cohort, which is site-wide, is available all throughout the site in all different places. And then we have ones that fit into course categories. Our miscellaneous category there has a cohort, and so courses in that category will be able to enroll people in this cohort, right? And that allows you to manage long lists of users in one go, rather than trying to do it all singularly, right? So if we go back to our course, we'll now look at the activities, what you can actually add to a course. So I mentioned the announcements, which is basically a forum to announce news. And if we turn editing on, you can see you can add an activity or a resource. So here we have activities. Activities are resources that the user interacts with, and usually will involve completing, grading, etc., etc. And then you have resources, which are like static files, folders, URLs, links, etc. And if I want to show you something else while I'm here, is that if I come into here, the file, add a new file, I'm going to upload a file. If I click here, I get what is called the file picker. And along down here, we have a list of things. So these are files that are on the system that have been uploaded onto the actual server itself. We have recent files, which is like a files that you've just used recently. Then we have an uploader file, URL downloader, things like Wikipedia. These are called repositories, okay? And Moodle ships with a lot of repositories, and you can create your own repositories as well. And I'll show you repositories now. I'll just turn off editing here, right? And we'll go to site and go to plugins again. And we have a look at repositories. So we come down here and we have repositories, and as you can see, there's several there. Embedded content bank, which you saw in the file picker. Content bank, server files, recent files up. These are the ones that are enabled and visible, right? Then we have others that are disabled by default. So you've got Box, you've got Dropbox, you've got Equella repository, Google Drive, Flickr, OneDrive, and even YouTube. So these can be enabled, and users can actually add them as a resource in their courses. Okay. So going back to our course, right? We then look at what happens. What's the difference between resources and activities and what have you. So we'll switch on editing, and we'll edit our assignment, which is an activity. So assignments is one of the activities, and with the usual stuff. So with assignments, with activity modules, you would have availability. So you have things like allow submissions, when's the due date, etc. Then you have submission types, so types of submissions that will be accepted. Now each activity might have its own settings. So for example, this is an assignment, so you have submissions, and submission types can be extended with a plugin as well. They are called sub plugins because assignment is the main plugin, and you can develop a sub plugin that plugs into assignments yourself with a plugin. And the same is true of feedback types. So you can have different feedback, how the teacher or the instructor can feedback on the submissions that have gone. So we've got some submission settings there. Whether we're going to allow group settings, group submissions, etc. So is it a group assignment, a group what have you. Other interesting thing is grades. Feeds into how you complete the activity. So you can have grades issued for the activity. Common module settings. All modules will have these settings. Not only, well, all modules. Modules are activities and resources. If you want to talk specifically about activities, you say activities. Specifically about resources, you'd say resources. But if you want to talk about them both, we refer to them as modules. So we have here common modules, which will appear for all. You can restrict access, and then interesting thing, activity completion. Activity completion feeds into course completions, and so you have things like no activity completion. The pupil can mark themselves as having completed the activity, or you can set some conditions. So student has to view it, student must receive a grade, or student must submit what have you, and you can restrict it by date. So that's an activity completion settings. And then you have competencies that basically feed into the kind of reward system and the badge and what have you in terms of completions. Then we have a resource. So just have a look at the difference between a resource and an activity. So you don't have that business of when it appears, etc. This is specific to this particular, which is a URL resource. So embed it, open it in another window. Any variables you want to pass through to the URL. Right, then you have your common module settings. Note only 2 things instead of 3 like we had in the other one. And then we have the same thing, activity completions. See, must view whatever you see the changes depending on what you, and then again our competencies. Right, then we and so we have things like badges and the certificates as well that can be used to reward participants for finishing off the course. So then we go across here and we look at the course completion. So after they've completed, you can set different conditions to mark a course as having been completed, and again that will feed into competencies and what have you. So you can have any of the conditions or all the conditions need to be met. And here we have the assignment. So that person would have to complete that assignment for for them to be recognized as having completed the course. And normally you'd have a whole list of activities that would need to be completed. You have to switch the completion on in the activity for it to appear as an option to complete the course. But there are other conditions. You can have date conditions to complete. You can have grade conditions to complete, or you can actually have things like being manually marked as completed by other users. And one you can also self-complete if allowed. So that is the course completion. So you complete your activities, you're then marked as having completed your course, and then the tutor then has an opportunity to actually view reports on what you've done. So we have lots of different options here, but you have reports. These are course specific, and you can look at things like activities, reports of activities, course participation, etc., etc. And this report, feeds into a higher level state of reports, which are at the site level. So we have reports in our site administration. We have a reports functionality. Again, reports is another area that's extendable by plugins. So we have here all these reports of some sort. You can look at configuration changes by somebody. You can look at the logs. Logs are very, very useful, especially if you're a plugin developer. You want to be able to write logs to let administrators know what's going on with your plugin, especially if you're doing things like API, REST API stuff and what have you, and you have all kinds of monitoring and what have you, so security checks, etc., etc. So logs, pick the wrong one. Let's look at live logs. There you can see me all doing what I've been doing all along. Yeah, so that's logs. So another area that can be extended by plugins is the appearance of the site. Now there's a lot of common kind of appearance things. So we have logos. You can add logos to the site. You have things like your default dashboard. Remember that we spoke about that earlier. So this could you could change this, and then that will be reset. You can actually reset all the dashboards for all the users right here. So a bit harsh, because somebody might have worked very hard on the dashboard, but sometimes you added a block that you need everybody to actually have access to, and you might fight to get people to actually add it to the dashboard. You've got a default profile page, etc. But the main one I'm talking about really is the themes. Now Moodle used to ship with quite a number of themes previously, but now it ships with only two: the classic theme and the boost theme. The boost theme is a responsive theme, which means you have a more responsive learning environment than any other thing. I'm not touching any much more than that in terms of themes, but plugins can check on themes, override some parts of themes, or even have their output overwritten by the theme in place. So these are things that sometimes are a little bit like gotchas if you're not aware of them. Then the final thing I wanted to point out on is development. Now, there are third-party plugins that help with you with development, and some of these may have started as third-party plugins. There's going to be, so here we have debugging. So while you're developing, you might want to set some debugging up. Now you can define some of these settings in the config file, in the config PHP, which means you can't reset them in the user interface. So usually in the config PHP, if you're developing, you do your settings in there, and then when on a live server, if you really needed to try and get some debugging to find out what's going on, then you could switch it on through the UI on the site. So let's go back now. Okay. Then we have things like for acceptance testing, PHP unit tests, and then we have and then a useful one as well is the purge caches, because a lot of caching happens in Moodle, and when you're developing, sometimes the caches catch you out, and you usually want to purge your caches quite often. As in development, you can do it on the command line, so that you don't get caught out with things that are coming out of the cache. And another interesting thing is the XMLDB editor, which allows you to create and manage your table schemas for your plugin. It ensures that your tables will work in whatever supported database engine the site is in. Okay. Now there's obviously many more other plugins that can be developed for Moodle. A quick glance through here, we've got all kinds of activity modules, admin tools, antivirus, availability restrictions, caching, custom fields, document converters, logging, media players, question types, repositories, and text editors. So there's quite a few, but this is where we're going to leave our tour. I think we've covered the major or the major areas that you would most likely be expected to be developing plugins for.